Brandon watched his classmates having fun from the patio. The music playing in the house was muted nonsense on the other side of the glass, just rumbles of bass on window panes. He saw flashes of his peers, stylish haircuts, normal-sized teeth. At 18, he was already balding, with a smile only his mother loved. He was punching a helium balloon reading "Congrats, grad," when 4 other 18-year-olds joined him outside. He observed as a guy wearing a rugby jersey pulled a baggie from his pocket and began rolling a joint. He wanted to say something, find a way to impress them, join them. He cleared his throat.
You know that stuff gives you cancer, right? Real cool.
Moments later, he was driving home. The guy in the jersey called him a narc. He hated himself and every stupid word that left his idiot face. Whenever he wasn't having fun, images of his father, who was also named Brandon, came to mind. Brandon used to look at photos of the man on his mother's old phone. Pictures of college parties, friends' weddings, rowdy weekends. He was laughing in every single photo. He wasn't attractive, his mother liked to point out. Big thighs for a man, tiny teeth, bald. But his smile stole her heart. She said Brandon had his father's smile, but he didn't see it. That smile, all gums and tiny teeth like a dental exam picture, never appeared on Brandon's face the same way. Perhaps due to the man's looming shadow, Brandon was not like his father. His mother, Sissy, was surprised to see Brandon home so early. She had encouraged him to attend the party. It was the summer after his senior year. He should be out having fun, she told him.
Your dad was such a partier. So many people at his funeral.
Yeah, I wish I could have been there.
When he was much younger, Brandon had a hard time reconciling the fact that he never met his father. But it wasn't just that. He had missed him by a long shot. As a toddler, he'd ask Sissy the same questions over and over.
When did Daddy die?
June 2035. Cancer.
And when was I born?
You know that, honey. August 2039.
He never asked about what happened in those 4 years. Sissy had Brandon when she was 56 years old. He knew some kind of fertility technology had to be used, but he didn't know which. He knew nothing about the other half of his genome and wouldn't until the email arrived. Brandon was playing a game on his view screen when the message chimed in his inbox. The sender was named Barbara Lee O'Cleary, and the subject read, "You're invited, A.G. Crispo Family Union." Brandon did not know a Barbara Lee O'Cleary. She was in her 70s, judging by the profile pic. He did not know of any A.G. Crispo. He deleted the email, as well as the follow-up he received a week later. It was an email reading, "Is this Brandon Mullins? Sorry if wrong address," to which he finally responded.
I'm Brandon. What is this?
"Good," Barbara wrote back. "We have a lot of Brandons, LOL. We are holding a family union for the kids of A.G. Crispo. All the siblings will be gathered and, fingers crossed, we may even get to meet our father." This line drained Brandon of all air. He didn't know if the woman was confused or just dumb. When Brandon showed the email to his mother, her mouth shrank.
It doesn't make sense. She said we're meeting our father, but she's an old woman.
Not to mention, he thought, that his father was dead. His mother responded slow and choppy, like reciting a bank password.
She's probably just confused.
A.G. Crispo. Did Dad know anyone with that name?
Sissy squinted at a far corner of the ceiling.
It is familiar.
It is?
Brandon's voice jumped a register. Sissy regretted her response at once.
Who is it?
He was a relative of your father's.
She got up, hands rubbing. Brandon heard as she started unloading the dishwasher.
So it's a family reunion?
In the email subject, the woman had written union, a typo, he figured.
Should I go?
Brandon was sure his mother would say no. She was clanking the dishes so loudly, blowing hot air through her nose.
If you want to.
The air buzzed with static. It could storm any moment. A heavy damp clung to Brandon's skin, and a thick gauze of cloud cover obscured the sky. The clock on the dash read 9:45 a.m. Even with the windows up, they smelled ointment. 100 geriatrics filled the campground, huddled around picnic tables, cornhole boards, and in lines for the buffet. In the parking lot, a bus from Pennsylvania opened its doors to unleash 20 elderly men and women, all wearing name tags, windbreakers, and wraparound sunglasses. There were canes, walkers, and dozens of wheelchairs, but many could still walk. They filled out similar silhouettes: scoliosis in the women, bulging paunches on the men, thick hams on everybody. Bald heads, wet mouths, and tiny teeth.
Brenda, Brian, Bill, Beebe. Oh, we got more Brandons!
Wheezed a greeter at the bus door with Brent on his name tag. He spat something pulpy into a wad of tissue.
Better tell the rest of them.
Brandon and his mom waited in her Mazda Protege. His mother crinkled in her ripped leather seat.
Are you all right?
Yeah?
Brandon tried to sound neutral, but failed. They couldn't all be so old, could they?
Are you sure this is right?
Look at the banner.
He hadn't noticed the 20 feet of printed vinyl suspended over the rustic wooden gate. A.G. Crispo Family Union. Even the banner had the typo. Sissy watched every crease of her son's eyebrows, studied the fold of his arms.
Let's go home.
She tried to sound hopeful.
We could do something fun. Just you and me.
Well, maybe we could go to the...
A hand knocked hard on the window. Sissy screamed in a short burst like someone testing a smoke alarm. A woman in her 70s stood outside, a 35-degree curl to her spine, a clipboard in her hand.
Oh, I didn't mean to scare you.
The mother rolled down the window.
Hi, Brandon Mullins from Indiana.
Brandon looked to his mother, then nodded.
Oh, good. Let me welcome you to the 10th A.G. Crispo Family Union. My name is Barbara Lee O'Cleary. I emailed you. It's nice to finally meet.
She waved at Sissy. Sissy did not wave back.
Oh, I hope you weren't looking to park. It's Crispo's only, I'm afraid.
The mother squeezed the rubber of the steering wheel until it squeaked. Brandon spoke up.
No, she was just dropping me off.
Well, great. I'll let you give your mom a smooch, and we'll introduce you to the family.
Sissy rolled up the window.
You can still leave. You won't see her again. She'll never know.
Mom, Jesus! It's okay. I should do this.
Brandon opened the car door and joined Barbara outside. He had never seen Sissy act so defensive. He watched as the protege looped the parking lot. She wouldn't wave back when she passed. It looked like she was crying.
I can't believe how young you are. I was sure we had the age backwards. He's gotta be 81, I told Barbara M. Oh, come on. I know some fellas who would love to meet you.
In the distance, thunder rumbled. No one was allowed to swim. A few men picked up footballs, but most everyone took to the picnic tables. To a group of 12, an old man in a toupee popped a fun party question.
So, who got cancer?
10 hands went up, and despite the subject matter, there were smiles and laughs.
Where?
Colon.
Me too! And me!
And I make 4!
Said the man who asked.
Now what about diabetes?
The largest table was in the gazebo, and it had been claimed by all the Crispo men named Brandon. Though they had been raucous all morning, the Brandons were now silent. They did not know how to respond to the relative child Barbara had brought them. So far, the clan had members with ages of 82, 81, 385s, 76, 279s, and 874s.
My goodness,
Brandon 76 said.
he's a baby!
He's 18.
Barbara told them. Several Brandons exchanged looks. Was he one of them?
What's your name, son?
He's wearing a name tag, Brandon.
You gotta hear it, Brandon. That's the only way to tell.
Brandon swallowed audibly.
My name's Brandon.
The whole gazebo gasped. Someone cracked a beer. "Well, that settles it!" Brandon 76 banged his fists on the table. "Oh, go, go!" And the others took up the cry.
Let's teach him the handshake.
They did, for what felt like an hour. There were 6 moves, including 2 claps, a backwards high five, and jazz hands. The men would not settle until Brandon had it right. After 45 minutes, Brandon had enough. The Brandons talked so loud his ears hurt. How could one family have so many Brandons? It seemed incestuous. He hoped these men weren't very related to his father. Distant cousins, uncles by marriage, he prayed. Then it hit him. They all had his father's smile. The smile surrounded him, laughing and laughing. Brandon stood up and slammed the table harder than he meant to.
I need to go get a water.
Brandon stumbled from the gazebo and walked until he found 4 coolers chilling in the grass. The final one was marked beer and wine.
Fuck it.
He opened the cooler when an old voice called to him.
You're a young one, aren't ya?
The voice came from an elderly woman looming by a stand of life jackets.
Huh? Oh, yeah.
He let the cooler lid close, caught red-handed.
Did your parents mean to get such an old model?
Brandon only caught the first part of what she said.
Parent.
Excuse me?
I don't have a dad. Just a mom.
Well, we both know that's not true.
The woman laughed at him. He shrank.
You know what I mean. Besides biologically.
I should say, our brother on the Pennsylvania side said we'd get to meet our father later.
Brandon choked on his saliva.
I very much doubt it.
Neither Brandon nor the woman knew what to say after that. All around, their siblings were laughing and taking selfies. The old woman sighed.
Jesus, go ahead and grab a beer. I didn't mean to get in the way. Jesus.
She opened the cooler for him.
Or do you want wine?
Beer.
She handed him a Grimp's Hard Croa. She grabbed a can of wine for herself. It was 2 gulps in by the time Brandon took a cautious sip. She began to walk away, and without really thinking about it, the kid followed. The woman led them near the pond. She was in her early 80s, scoliosis bent, a little fire in her eyes. Her name tag read Brienne. She was ornery, he could tell. Brienne frowned with little teeth when Brandon sat next to her.
You should go mingle.
I don't want to mingle.
Yeah?
She gave him a sideways grin.
Me neither. But you should. I'm sure you could learn something from all these old shits.
Brandon gasped like a little boy. She swore. It was oddly endearing.
You ain't a dancer, are you?
No.
Yeah, that's what I figured. I've been asking everybody what they did for work. I cleaned houses, but I always wanted to be a dancer. Hell, I still want to be a dancer.
She laughed and shook the cane she was holding.
I hoped, maybe we had a dancing gene, that it was in our blood. But no, we don't have one. Not that my parents would ever spring for dancing genes. I still ask myself, why didn't my parents pay for better sperm?
Brandon spit up his beer, but Brienne thought he was laughing.
I mean, I guess I wouldn't be me if that was the case, but you get what I mean. For God's sake, if you're gonna buy cum, at least buy good cum. Friggin' bargain hunters. And of course they get buyer's remorse. Oh, we should have waited for the newer model. All this for 15 grand?
She noticed Brandon's silence and turned to him.
Jesus, you look like you just drank gasoline.
The thought of the smell almost made Brandon heave right there. He uttered one word.
Come?
And that's when Brienne looked Brandon hard in the eye, like a veterinarian checking for parasites.
Brandon, do you know what a family union is?
Reunion.
He whispered, but she shook her head. He hated this serious look in her eye, the overwhelming pity. Brandon spilled his beer getting up from the table. She followed him up.
This isn't like a normal family gathering. Most of us were meeting for the first time. We're all of us brother and sister. We were all conceived from the same sperm, Brandon. Crispo model AG.
Brandon felt his mind drain like a bathtub. He nodded as though she just told him what they'd be serving for lunch. He tried to walk, but his knees were shaking. He fell to the ground, and he didn't know why, but he started making this noise. The woman waved her arms, shouted words Brandon didn't hear. All he could think was that his mother had betrayed him. She had hidden his own identity. Then he finally ran out of breath, and so drained, went promptly faint. He faded in and out of consciousness for a few seconds and heard what Brienne was shouting.
He didn't know he's a Crispo!
A minute later, a crowd of 12 elderly people with big thighs and Paul Giamatti features had surrounded the kid. Someone was pouring water into his mouth when he woke and spat it out in a violent fit. Everywhere he looked, he saw his father's grin.
He didn't even know. Didn't think they made him like us anymore.
They don't.
He's got the teeth, but are you sure?
Get off of me!
He pushed the frail hands away, tried to stand, but he was still shaking.
I'm not some kind of a
He failed to think of the words guinea pig.
fucking science hog. Get the fuck away!
More people were coming by. Smiles added to the mass staring down at Brandon, including a few other Brandons he recognized from before. He felt sick until he heard a comforting, harsh voice.
Jesus, give him room. Acting like you've never seen a Crispo before.
It was Brienne. She gave Brandon a worried look until a Brandon pushed her aside.
You mean your parents never told you?
He didn't wait for Brandon's answer.
God damn! Sounds like my folks. You know how ashamed people were about fertility tech back in the day. I didn't know till I saw it in my papa's will. Dearest Brandon, it's time you knew. I was 15.
No need for us. We were in the infertile crescent, so plenty of maker babies.
I always wished I was a Crispo AT. Now there's some sperm.
Someone flashed a photo, and he could feel the tortured stretches of his face. Imagine his confused trauma captured for all time. The smile all around him, laughing. Brandon pleaded for escape, and in a rare instance of fortune, something listened. Thunder roared overhead in a burst, and the clouds opened. The dirt was instantly mud. Rain poured down in sheets. Warbling voices cried out. Brandon's, Brendan's, and Barbara's slipped in their soaked orthopedics. Folks ran for cover. Brandon stood up, wobbled on his feet, and raced away. He had to talk to his mother. Brienne watched him go, standing still in the downpour. She could hardly believe someone was still keeping secrets like his anymore. How old-fashioned. While most everyone went to the cafeteria for cover, Brienne followed the sound of Brandon's voice to the Arts and Crafts building. He was sitting between a plastic shelf of acrylic paints and the wall.
Pick up the phone!
He shouted.
I know you're seeing this. Pick up the stupid phone!
He had sent her 15 texts and had now left her 6 different voicemails. He doubted everything she had ever told him. If he was born from a sperm donor, then why say her husband was his father? There were other kids born from donors, rich kids with designer genomes. It wasn't that uncommon. Why hide it? Brienne knocked on the frame of the open door.
Leave me alone!
Brienne did not enter, but spoke from outside.
Do you want another beer? A water, maybe?
I want my mom to answer her phone.
What would you even say?
Brandon went silent. He made his sound from before, but more subdued.
Come on. I think I got something you'll want to see.
Wind howled through the pine trees, and the umbrella did little for the pair as they approached the cafeteria. Wet old folks milled around, helping themselves to cold pastries and hot oatmeal. With the rain, the smell was fuller. Bengay and flowery perfume spilled generously over the acid reek of old skin. The names and all the name tags were blurring. Brienne didn't lead Brandon towards their other siblings, but to a curtained-off area guarded by completely drenched Barbara.
I found him.
She told the old woman. Barbara stopped wringing the water from her windbreaker.
Oh, good.
Her eyes were wet too, but it wasn't the rain.
I swear, honey, we didn't know you hadn't been told. It can be a shock for people, and I would never... Listen, I wouldn't have invited you if...
It's okay. It's not your fault.
He felt for his phone, wishing it would buzz.
Well, let's show him then.
Brienne told Barbara. She nodded and pulled the curtain to the side. No one had been admitted yet to the veiled area. No wet footprints on the tile. Tables were set up along the walls. On one was a bingo roller. Another table was covered in a community quilt. In the middle, there was a device on a bar table that looked like a crusty old humidifier. By the window, where rain hammered from outside, a row of wide-framed photographs. Barbara joined Brandon by his side.
I've been doing these family unions for years. I was always proud to be a Crispo. We're a remnant from the dark days when infertility was, well, a scourge. We were a solution, but as time told us, not a very good one.
Brandon came upon the first frame. It was an enormous group photo, 1,000 tiny faces with teeny tiny teeth, bald heads, but young skin, no wheelchairs.
It's ironic, of course, that the solution to infertility did what it did.
Barbara told him.
We all look happy in that one, don't we?
Brandon nodded.
That's because we still thought we could have children.
The next photograph was not so wide. Their numbers had diminished, their frown lines coming in.
By this time, the studies had come out. A lot of us were married, tried to conceive, didn't. It wasn't intentional, making us all mules. Just a side effect of using, well, not exactly natural sperm. Then the cancer started popping up.
The next photographs in the line were smaller and smaller. Barbara called him back to one in the middle, dated 2033.
See if you can spot a familiar face.
He looked, and he looked. Brandon knew what face he was looking for, yet for all he tried, he couldn't find the man. The faces were all so similar, those balding heads and big gums.
I can't find him.
Barbara had to flip the photograph over, where a list of numbered names ran across the back.
Ah, here he is.
He was the second row, third from the left. Brandon could now recognize the man, but it struck him how hard finding his own father was. His smile, big as it was, blended in with all the others.
Yeah. That's my dad.
He said to Barbara.
No, it isn't.
Barbara said gently, as though too hard a word could topple him over.
That's your brother.
Brandon slumped slightly over the table.
He's my brother too, and Brienne's. And you're all our little brother.
The frames fell as Brandon fell over the table, breathing hard. It was like someone stuck a paperclip in him for a hard reset. Brienne didn't say it, but she mouthed the word Jesus. Brienne and Barbara walked Brandon back to the main hall of the cafeteria. He was numb, feet walking themselves, a temporary automaton. His phone buzzed in his pocket, but he didn't check it. The old women lowered Brandon onto a bench.
Do you want a water? An apple juice?
The glassy look in his eye began to fade. He blinked, rubbed his face hard with his palms. Then he began to laugh.
Yeah, get me a beer.
Barbara scrunched her mouth to the side.
Goodness sake, he's old enough.
Brienne left to get the kid a drink. He kept laughing.
I'm such a fucking idiot.
He said with such odd glee.
Honey, don't say that about yourself.
It's true.
He remembered his phone and pulled it out. A text from his mother, just 2 words. I'm sorry. He laughed harder.
God. Look at them. It's incredible.
Barbara joined him as he took in the multitude of sniffling elderly folks. Yes, there were similarities, but so much difference. Men in wheelchairs, women on walkers, dentures, little teeth, large and small. Doctors, teachers, alcoholics, diabetics, Christians, and perverts.
I've only compared myself to one of them.
He laughed harder.
I thought I was trapped.
He stood up the moment Brienne came with his drink, popped it open, and took a hearty sip. Then another.
I could be any one of these Crispos. Hell, I could be one of the dead ones.
Every genetic possibility was laid out before him, and as sobering as it was to see 100 variations of his possible decay, he had never felt more free. For the first time, he didn't give a damn. The first beer was quickly empty, and the Brandons took notice. An 82-year-old Brandon gave him another hard croa, and by the time he was halfway through, the party was truly getting started. Music from 50 years ago blared on a wireless speaker. An ancient Brenda hooted with a vocal palsy, and a wheelchair squeaked on an impromptu dance floor. Brandon's face stretched in a new direction, lips pulled taut and wide, little teeth displayed proudly in all those inches of gum. Phone cameras flashed, and a family smile was captured on every face. Let's hear it for the kid! Someone handed Brandon another beer, and his youth spread to the old folks. Arthritic joints cracked to the beat of a sexy R&B number from the 2000s. Old hands clapped Brandon on the back, and Brandon shared a dozen secret handshakes with the other Brandons. Brandon was dancing with an octogenarian, hiccuping as he helped her wheelchair make pirouettes when he noticed Brienne watching him. He wobbled over to her, and without a word, grabbed her hand. Someone put on the song Harvest Moon, and it felt right. Big sister and little brother spun in slow circles. Brandon could hardly keep his head upright, but his face had a drunken glow. The song ended, and Barbara tapped on a microphone.
All right, Crispos, everyone finally dry? Oh gosh, well, our brother from Pennsylvania delivered. That's right, he found the very fella we all share in common. Join us through the curtain and spend some time with Dad.
Brienne pondered the kid.
And you said you weren't a dancer.
He made a bashful, drunk grin.
Come on. We don't want to miss him, do we?
The other side of the curtain was mobbed with geriatrics, attention focused to a single focal point obscured by the crowd. Brienne and Brandon arrived at the back. Brandon squeezed between old suit jackets and cardigans. Brienne followed, but they were soon split apart in the commotion. The talking was obnoxious and loud. Brandon saw other Brandons among the throng, pushing their way to the front. The closer he got, the faster Brandon's heart beat. Did he really want to meet the man? How old would he be? Ancient, he figured. Maybe it was just his ashes. Whether he wanted to or not, the crowd carried him forward. Midway through the bustle of wrinkled hands and faces, someone handed Brandon a permanent marker. In fact, near the front, everyone had markers. Where was this father? He could see through the bodies, but did not see what lay at the center. The pressure of the crowd thrust him forward, and there the father was. Their communal dad was not a person, but the object Brandon mistook earlier for a humidifier. It was all eroded metal, probably once chrome and modern, now rusted and antique. Tubes lined the broad hole of it, like spines down a back. Inside a tempered glass dome, yellowed and foggy with age, Brandon could smell the vestige of a bleach aroma. At the front, the worn machine had a tap, like a keg, still crusty with substance. A metal plate screwed in above it read, Crispo Model AG. The sperm was not frozen. It was artificial. He had been its final commission. Brandon realized what the marker was for. The names of the children were scrawled all around the ancient device like a World Series baseball. Brandon uncapped the pen. On the metal nameplate, he wrote Brandon Mullins. Then, below it, Brandon Mullins, Jr.